The question of whether or not Speaker of Parliament, Speaker of the National Assembly, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula will find a way in the dock has not been answered. In fact, that matter has not been postponed until June. I also believe, though, watching today's proceedings and that image of her in the dock is something that she really tried hard to fight. But it was inevitable all along anyway. Speak to people in the legal fraternity or even those in the ANC. There was no other way around this particular matter but to appear in the dock. So the image she tried to fight off, pointless exercise. It is out there. My thoughts about what this moment means. I mean, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula is one of the most senior politicians. Think about it. I mean, I grew up seeing her as a child as a political figure in the country. She has served multiple times across multiple cabinets, has served in different departments. So this is somebody with clout. When you think about Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, the way I'd often refer to her on the field, is here's somebody who easily asserts herself, able to articulate what she wants or doesn't want, is actually also quite stubborn. And here you are today seeing her having to answer to these graft allegations. Multiple things come to mind for me. Number one, was she pushed or not pushed? I think she had no option but to resign. I want you to think about Phala Phala a little bit when I make this point. So the reason I'm mentioning Phala Phala and asking you to jog back to 2022 when that matter was fever pitch is that there was an independent panel report that was released. If that independent panel report was to be adopted by Parliament and the ANC didn't use its numbers, then the president would have had to face a committee that asked him whether or not he's fit for purpose or fit for office, right? Same thing now with a motion of no confidence sitting before the National Assembly. Parliamentarians would have to deliberate whether or not the speaker is fit for purpose. In the case of Phala Phala, the numbers were in the president's favor. The ANC used its might to quash it. The factions of the ANC were in favor of the then president. A few people were dissenting voices, but it was really inconsequential. In this case, with the speaker facing a motion of no confidence, I don't think she could lobby anybody or enough support at least in order to survive a motion of no confidence. Never mind what opposition parties have mentioned, that the concern is that it would embarrass South Africa's parliament, which is really a bastion of who and what we are. Trying to put up a fight when, first of all, you're not returning to parliament is difficult. Also, when you're not in the ANC's NEC, that highest decision-making body in between conferences is still very much influential. So even the people that you try and rally behind you who are looking out for themselves, because politics is still about self-preservation, whether you like it or not, that's just a matter of fact. That's just a fact of life when it comes to politics. So you can't get people who are looking at elections and worried about what happens to them after elections. And if the ANC remains the governing party, they're also worried about cabinet positions. So people have aspirations and they won't risk them in your name. That's why when you look at even that appearance, she had somebody like Mambala Gambete on her side, a former speaker, but also somebody whose time is up, you know. She served her time, she's got her perks. So it's not like she's risking anything by appearing alongside Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. And what I've really found surprising is a lot of ANC leaders saying to me, but what is Nosiviwe? The issue is inconsequential. She is of no effect as far as the ANC is concerned. It does more harm to keep her than to fight for her, because there's a party that's currently facing a difficult election cycle. Because truth be told, nobody wants to go into the elections limping and then you're picking up additional injuries. Can you imagine what the opposition would be doing? In fact, they started about a speaker who's under a cloud as you go to elections, as an ANC that's been attached to corruption, and the cloud that the speaker has is one of corruption allegations. Like, it just simply doesn't work. It doesn't serve the ANC. And I mean, speaking to some of the leaders, they've said to me, it's the best way. We like her. We have some level of sympathy for her. Some will argue that the people who actually feel something for her, some empathy, are those who have clouds of state capture hovering above them. So think about a David Mahlobo, Ala Zizi Kotwa, maybe a Gwede here and there, that those people might feel even sorrier for her. Because you know what? At a blink of an eye, if the NPA pounces on those people, they'll be in her shoes too. But I do think I get that from a political perspective. It just made no sense to them. But I do get their arguments from a political perspective why they had to pretty much like cut their losses and look at it from afar. Some tell me that they do talk to her, that they do see her, that they do provide comfort, but many are also not willing to be seen by her side at the moment. Like I said, politics is about self-preservation. So I do think that there are a couple of ironies if you look at this particular matter. Somebody once served correctional services in the ministry, complaining about the quality of our correctional services facilities, disease-ridden, not fit for anybody. Who's it fit for? Because you're important, it's not fit for you, but every other person who's also suspected of something, who could also be innocent like you're claiming to be, would have to be in those holding cells. Something about our leaders and being removed from reality in that particular moment and not having any shame. You've led. You are in part responsible for the very thing that you're complaining about. I also think people don't realize this, but actually this is the second speaker in this administration who appeared before the doc. I want you to think about the previous speaker, Metandi Mudise, and the farm, right? And the animals, the starving farms, the pigs on the farm. So we have in this one administration 2 ANC speakers having been put in the dock. What does that say? And then the last thing that I found really interesting is the ANC itself. So the ANC has noted this, welcomed it, but has also celebrated a decision by a speaker, a senior member of the party, to step aside, step down, actually, the correct term, as opposed to being made to step aside as the party's rule, saying, that it shows you that she takes the party seriously, that she also respects the integrity of Parliament. It's very interesting for me because you need to now jog back again to the July unrest in 2021, when Mapisa-Nqakula was seen as problematic, being seen as defiant in the face of a president, and that back and forth about intelligence, and the back and forth about the way certain issues were dealt with, right? On the back of riots, really, and destruction of property that were happening in our country. There was a back and forth, and the answer to a Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula that some in the CR faction, but they couldn't work with, was to see her go to Parliament. So they now celebrate the respectability and integrity and, the house, but when you sent her there because it was a way to get rid of her, what were you communicating? What respect did you show this country's parliament in that move? Today you celebrate and you say it's the right thing for parliament, but you dump people in parliament. What does that say about the seriousness that the ANC takes this arm of the state? I think that's one of the questions I keep asking myself about what all of this actually means, because there's definitely high talk in those statements about the respectability, but it's not shown when it ought to be shown by the governing party. So as far as Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula is concerned, she'll fight this off. She is insisting she's innocent, but I also think it's interesting that even though we had written her off on the issue of deployment, it wasn't necessarily game over for like tickets. Even if she would not return to Parliament or being Speaker, there's always opportunities for deployment, to be part of envoys, to be ambassador somewhere. And I think that door itself is shut. But again, meaning the ANC is cutting losses. It's easier for the ANC to do this, for her to fall on her sword and to deal with this in the court of law, and for the ANC to affirm the courts than for them to fight for her. Because as I said, if you look at it, it's really nothing. Politically, she wields nothing that is worth putting up a fight in favor of her for, if that makes sense. Because we also don't know if she's going to sing herself, and we also don't know what strings this moment will pull going forward. What I think we must celebrate as a country is the fact that there's something like this, and we must cross our fingers that the NPA plays its cards right and we get convictions. This country deserves to see these big wigs, these big politicians, these big kahunas going down. We can't cry about corruption and nothing is done about it.